Welcome back to another math lesson where we keep math simple and easy to understand. Now, we have a problem here, and the problem is this. The question goes as follows. A diameter of a circle has endpoints A, -2 and -3, and B, -1 and 5. Find the center of the circle and the radius. If your answer is not an integer, express it in radical form and write the equation of the circle. Well, that's a lot to swallow, but let me show you a quick way to do this. Right, so let's start off with the first part. So a diameter of a circle has endpoints A and B. So what you're going to do is just draw a little circle like what you see here, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as you can picture it, right? Now, endpoints just basically means at the end. In other words, on the circumference, right? Now, you cannot have a diameter if you don't have a circle, right? So what are we going to do with these endpoints? Well, we're just going to connect them. So let's connect them. So if I connect them, A and B, I have a diameter. Now, because that's basically the definition of a diameter is from the circumference through the center to another point on the circumference. Right. So, okay, so that's the first part. So we drew a little circle and we put our endpoints A and B on the circle, and we connected it with a straight line, and in the middle of that straight line, that's where the center is. All right, so the first part would be to find the center of the circle. So how do we do that? We make use of the formula, the midpoint formula, because center just basically means midpoint, right? So, but in order to use this formula, as you can see, we have x sub 1, x sub 2 divided by 2, y sub 1, y sub 2 divided by 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to label my points x sub 1, because that's the first x value. And I'll label this y sub 1 because that's the first y value. And I'm going to label this, if this is the first x value, then this will be the second x value, right? If this is the first y value, then this will be the second y value. So I'm going to label that as y sub 2. And now I'm just going to substitute it into the formula. Right, so let's do that. So what's my x sub 1? My x sub 1, well, that is just -2, so that's -2 right there. What's my y? What's my x sub 2? My x sub 2 is -1. Sorry, it should be the other way around, my bad. So x sub 1 is -2. And x sub 2, that's -1. So as you can see, I'm just substituting. What's my y sub 1? My y sub 1 is -3. And what's my y sub 2? Well, that is just 5. Right, so I'm done with the substitution. Now I'm just going to simplify. So in the numerator right here, we have -2 plus open bracket -1. So if you simplify that, that just reduces to -3. So this part right here, I'm just going to rewrite it -3 over 2. If I simplify that, that just becomes 2. And if I simplify that, that just 1. So the center, the green point right there, has the coordinates of -3/2 and 1. So that's my center right there. So -3/2 and 1. Alright, so far so good. So now let's go ahead and put that into our little formula. So remember, our formula for the equation of a circle is right there. Now remember, the first value represents the h and the second value represents k. Now when you do the substitution after you find the center, then just take the additive inverse. In other words, the opposite. What's the opposite of negative? That will just be positive. So we'll have positive 3/2. And what's the opposite of positive 1 if we substitute it in? Well, that will just be negative. Alright, so far so good. Now we need to find the radius. Now, if you look at this diameter, now a radius is just basically from A to the green point. That will be a radius. Another radius would be from the green point to B. That's also another radius. So we have a diameter which has 2 radii or 2 radiuses. Now we can choose whether we want to use this radius from A to the green point, that radius, or we can choose to use this radius from the green point to B. Okay, but what I'm going to do is, so let me just erase that point so that we don't get confused, and then let's just focus our attention on finding this radius right here. So this radius, now let's just label our coordinates. Now we already have x sub 1, y sub 1, so let's label this as x sub 2 and y sub 2. So I'll make this x sub 2, y sub 2. Now why am I doing that? Because in my formula I have x sub 2 minus y sub 1, y sub 2 minus y sub 1. Alright, and now I can just substitute. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. Just move this a little bit. Let's put my negatives there. So what's my x sub 2? My x sub 2 is -3/2. So I'm just going to substitute that, -3/2. And my x sub 1 is -2. Remember, when it's negative, just put it in brackets or parentheses. So -2. What is my y sub 2? My y sub 2 is 1. So I'm just going to put that in there. And what is my y sub 1? My y sub 1 is -3. Remember, when it's negative, put it in brackets. If you put that in your calculator, as you can see what I did here, you'll get an answer of the square root of 65/2. So the square root of 65 all over 2. So that is my radius. right? That's just the radius. That's not the radius squared, so don't get confused. This is only the radius from there to there, right? But in the formula, we have to square it because that's what it says. So if so the radius, so let me just put my radius in here, which is 65 over 2, right? But remember, in the formula, we square the radius, right? So if I take this and I square it, I get 65 over 4. So 65 over 4, that is my radius square. Now, if I take this distance, in other words, that distance right there, which is square root of 65 over 2, if I put that in my calculator, and I press SD, I see the answer as a decimal, which is 4.031, rounded to 2 decimal places. So 4.03 rounded to 2 decimal places. Right, now let's see how all of this relates in GeoGebra Classic. Now let's see whether our answers are correct. So there's my point A, which is -2 and -3, right there. And B, we have -1 and 5, and the center, which is -3 over 2 and 1. Right. The equation of the circle, we've worked it out to be x plus 3 over 2 all squared plus y minus 1 all squared equal to 65 over 4. And remember how we got the 65 over 4. Remember we said we have to square the distance, this distance that we found between A and the center. We have to square it. Why? Because in the formula it says take the radius, in other words from A to the green point, and then square it. And when we do that, we get 65 over 4. So, and voila, you see that the circle actually goes through points A and B, and the center is right there. Now we need to check the radius, and we said that the radius, we took the radius from A to the green point. So let me just make the center a green point right there. Let's change that color. Let's make it green. Right. Now, if I take the center, well, this is actually, let's see. So from A to the center, right, which is that line right there. Now, if I should measure this, I should get an answer of 4.03. Now, keep in mind our picture that we drew at the beginning. It's not an accurate picture, but now GeoGebra actually gives us the accurate picture. Yeah. So just keep that thing in mind. So if I measure now using the distance button from A to the center, I should get an answer of 4.03, and there you can see it right there. And that's basically how we do it. So if you like this video and it really helped you, so don't forget to smash that like button.